Hello there and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp. Happy New Year. It's 2026 and today's episode I thought I would revisit or do a different take on a topic we did a couple of days ago. That was about increasing the flavour of various different crops to make them even more flavoursome. And I said that this could be done, and this has been done by conventional breeding and a mix of environmental manipulation, but not artificial flavourings in a number of crops, particularly grapes and strawberries. But what if you wanted to reduce the flavour in a crop? That might sound ridiculous, but there are a number of crops where this has been done successfully, and where there is a business opportunity for plant breeders and plant physiologists if you can do this in other crops. So it's been done in Brussels sprouts. Marks and Spencer's bred a Brussels sprout that was low in glucosinolates. This meant that it was lower in sulphur, and people who are predisposed to hate Brussels sprouts, there's a gene involved, I believe, and it makes them really bitter. And as you age, this bitterness detection reduces. So that's why parents get really annoyed at their children for not eating Brussels sprouts in the UK, but they don't understand that kids sense Brussels sprout taste a lot more. My kids don't seem to bother. They love Brussels sprouts. They'll eat plates of Brussels sprouts. So they bred a Brussels sprout that was low. It was a low-tasting one for people who didn't like Brussels sprouts. The only problem there is that the glucosinolates are the anti-cancer compounds, so you don't get as much benefit there. So what about other crops? Well, there's potential there that you could. Well, let's get back to Brussels sprouts. Another way of reducing the glucosinolate levels is just reduce the sulphur level in the grow media. Now, you can't potentially do that in soil, but in hydroponics you can, because you can just choose a fertilizer with a low sulphur or develop a fertilizer with a low sulphur. If you're a commercial Brussels sprout grower and you'd like a low sulphur fertilizer, then speak to us. You could do the same with onions. I think Georgia onions grow in low sulphur soil, that therefore they're sweeter and don't have such an astringent, sharp taste. So you could do the same on onions and Brussels sprouts. So there's both a genetic and a plant breeding and an environmental solution to that problem. Now in marrows, you don't call them marrows in America though. I think we call a small zucchini a courgette in the UK, and a large zucchini is a marrow. Don't know if you call them that. But basically a courgette, a small zucchini, is nice and tasty, and you can chop it up and fry it and put it in loads of dishes, roast it. But a marrow, you always roast, and it often has a very, very bitter taste. And that's because the chemical cucurbitacin builds up as the plant gets older and the tough material gets tougher. So potential there for breeding out, using low variety cucurbitacin, or gene suppression using CRISPR gene silencing technology to silence the cucurbitacin gene. So if you don't like marrow, you could have a nice tasting marrow because of that. Now another one, coriander. What do people call coriander in America? It's not got the same name, has it? Is it called cilantro? So cilantro, some people love it. I love it. I can't get enough. But other people think it has a soapy taste. And that's because there's a gene that some people have or don't have that means that they detect it as being soapy. That's due to aldehyde compounds. So you could potentially reduce that and have a soap-free coriander variety. So that's interesting. Other plants, there's a few other plants that have chemicals in them that some people find to be bitter. Spinach, which contains oxalic acid. It's the stuff that gives you kidney stones. Everyone detects that as like a gritty, nasty tasting one. So you could potentially have low oxalate lines of spinach, but potentially they would then be more prone to pest attack, maybe even disease. Eggplants, I didn't know this, but eggplants, or aubergine as we call it in the UK, they could have lower, they have phenolics in it. I didn't know this, that some people don't like that, eggplants or aubergine, but you could reduced oxidation could reduce the phenolics. So there's some environmental manipulation there that you could do to reduce the oxidation level. And then finally, lettuce. Lettuce contains a chemical called lactone. I think that's in the white sap that comes out of lettuce when you freshly cut it. And you could potentially breed more sweeter varieties and market them for people who don't like the bitterness. So I think that's really interesting. You could have a gentle flavour line of vegetables, low sulphur Brussels sprouts and onions that have been grown in low sulphur soil and choosing selective lines, sort of like those Georgia onions or the Marks and Spencer Brussels sprouts. You could have marrows where they've been gene suppressed to contain less cucurbitacin, coriander without the aldehydes that form the soapiness, spinach without the oxalic acid, which is bitter, eggplants or aubergines without the phenolics, potentially by manipulating oxidation levels. And then by choosing sweet varieties of lettuce, you could reduce the lactones that often have a bitter taste. Sometimes you get a lettuce and it's really, really bitter. So there you go. That's been Hydroponics Daily, the first episode of 2026. I said I wasn't going to do one every day, but I've already thought of a good episode for the first day of 2026. If you thought it was good, then please leave a rated review on Apple Podcasts, which helps share the area of hydroponics with the wider horticultural community. If you're not on Apple, just make sure you follow the podcast by clicking the plus sign or the add sign on your podcast provider. And at the very least, check out utrema.co.uk because we provide amazing, unique fertilizers, biostimulants and biopesticides that will allow you to manipulate fruit and vegetable flavour. And if you're looking for a low sulphur fertilizer, then speak to us and I'll look through our range and see which one best fits. And if you're large enough, we can even do a bespoke blend. We are that adaptable, flexible and nimble that we can do that because we're primary manufacturers. We're not resellers and we're not distributors, and we don't just stick our brand on a white label. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.